From time to time, what we will need to do is to move the pivot point of an object. Sometimes it will have moved to the wrong place and we need to get it back in the center, or sometimes we need to move it to align with a face or just move it away from the center of the object. This might be useful, say if you were creating a clock face. I press instance, I'll move the instance key on your keyboard, I'll move the pivot down, and I might create a clock face using duplicate special. So I'll go to edit and duplicate special. I've got my settings set up and it's allowed me to duplicate and rotate the object around its pivot point. So moving the pivot is really useful, and all I need to do is just press the insert button to allow me to rotate it, and press insert again in order to set it to where I've just moved it to. And then once I've pressed insert that second time, it means I'll be able to move the object around. So again, if I press insert, I can move this and move the pivot point. If I press it again, it sets the pivot point in that position. And just as I've demonstrated, if I do duplicate special and move the pivot point up a bit, it's duplicated all these objects around its pivot point and they're a little bit closer together. The other thing I can do is I can move the pivot point back to the center of my object by going to modify and then center pivot, and that'll move the pivot back to the middle of the object again. I can also move it to align with a face by selecting, say, vertices or a face, going to modify and center pivot. When I go back to the object again, that pivot has been moved to align with between those vertices. Or I can do the same with a face, modify, center pivot, and it will center the pivot around the face that I've selected. This is just a really useful tool if you need to be able to rotate things around a face, like for instance a door that needs to be able to rotate around from one side, or like I've said about doing a duplicate special where you need to duplicate the object a number of times around a pivot point that's far outside the object.